So this function simply does an alert, but let's make it a little more interesting by making the button itself do the alerting. So what we want to do is that we want to change the text of the button to say hello after it's been clicked. So what complicates this task slightly is that the foo variable is local to the hello world function, meaning that when this function is over, this function will not be able to just reference foo, but will need another way to get to the foo object. There are many ways of doing that, but I will discuss two of them. One is passing in the object as a parameter, and then later on I will talk about having the object as a class variable. So what we want to do is we want to define an argument for the greet function which takes in whatever object we want. I could still call it foo, or I could give it any other name I want. Let me just call it obj, just to illustrate that the foo variable and the obj variable are just local to whatever function they were defined in and are just aliases for whatever value they hold. And since this takes an object, I have to pass something in to this event, and you do that by the additional parameters to server event. So what I want to do is over here I want to pass in foo, and greet will catch it, but it will call it obj. Doesn't matter what you call it. And then over here what we said we wanted to do was we wanted to change the object's text to do the greeting, or in other words say hello. So obj arrow text is equal to hello. Now what we should expect this program to do is start out with a button that still says click me in the beginning and define a click for it, that when a user clicks it, the text of that object will be changed to hello. So let's save that and see it in action. It's click me, and when I click it, it says hello. So any function you define can take in any number of parameters, and in the server event it has to match the same number of parameters, assuming that they're mandatory and not optional, and they will appear after the name of the function. So in this example, my greet function only took in one parameter, but it could have taken in and passed in as many parameters as I would have liked. So we could make the greet function a little more multi-purpose by taking in other parameters. For instance, rather than setting an object's text to always hello, we can also take in the text that it will set to. So I'm going to add another parameter called text, and it'll set the text to the text variable. And now I will pass in hello for it to be set to. This will do the same thing, but it's just a slightly more dynamic way of doing it. Sometimes it's better, sometimes it's worse, depending on the situation. And of course I could have added any number of other parameters that I needed for my function. So let's just see this still behaving the way that we expect. There. But now let's try to make the function a little more interesting and a little more dynamic. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make the text of the button equal to its left coordinate. And I'm also going to change the left coordinate so that you'd be able to see that the event doesn't always have to do the same thing, but it just picks up from whatever was happening. So I no longer need this text parameter as a demonstration. Remove that. So like I said, I'm going to change the text to be equal to the same object's left. And then I'm also going to increase the left by 50. So I could say that the object's left, this is the increment operator, by 50 pixels. So now every time it is clicked, it'll say the number, and it'll also shift itself over by 50 pixels. Now even though this function no longer greets, I'm just going to leave it the same name out of sheer laziness. As I save it. Now, you'll also notice that I no longer have to refresh the page for this to work. The reason that I don't have to refresh the page was because only the event has changed, and the initial setup is still the same.